Now, what else can we do? Well, how about applying some of these neat and nifty effects to text? Well, I'm going to grab my type tool here and I'm going to type in a line of text. So just grab your type tool, single click, and type in some text here. I'll go back to my black arrow tool, hold down Shift, click and drag on one of the corners there to scale it up just a little bit. And if you want to use a different font, go ahead. I want to use something a little bit more interesting here. I'm just going to hit Control T on my keyboard. That brings up my character palette, as well as my paragraph palette and my open type palette. And I'll go and choose a different font here. Maybe what I'll do is I'll use Onyx, for example. And I could increase my size here if I wanted to. I just find it much faster to hold down Shift and drag. So now I have something like this happening. I'll get rid of my character palette, and I think what I'll do is I'll just zoom in just a little bit so I can see this a little closer here. Now here's where things get interesting. There's some serious limitations when working with effects and live text. What I mean by live text is this is real, actual text. I can double click in here, I can highlight my text, I can make some changes if I want. In other words, it's not outlined, it's live, it's real, it's editable. Now, as far as these limitations go, well, I'm going to go into my appearance palette. I'll pull it down here so we have it a little bit closer. And I can tell that I have some type and I have some characters here. I'll double click on characters and I can see that I have no stroke and a black fill. Now I'm thinking, hey, I want to use some offset path and maybe I'll throw in a couple of extra strokes and this sort of thing. If I go up to my appearance palette menu, the new fill and new stroke items are grayed out. In other words, I cannot have more than a single stroke and a single fill on live text. So what do we do about it? Well, no worries, we can get this happening. I'm going to go over to my toolbox and I'm going to make sure that my fill color is on top there just by clicking on it. And then I'll click on the None button there and that completely removes the fill and the stroke from my text there. Now you might be going, well, where is he going with this? Well, this is where it gets a little bit weird. So one more time, in my appearance palette, if I double click on characters, there's no fill and no stroke. Click back on Type No Appearance. That'll take you back to where you just were. Make sure you're on your black arrow tool, by the way, as well, and you can see your type line there, your type path, where it's sitting. And now I can go up to my Appearance Palette menu and choose New Fill. There's my fill back. And I'll choose New Stroke. And maybe I'll set a blue using my color palette here for my stroke. There it is there. And you can see I've been given an empty stroke there as well. So I'll come in and set maybe a red for that stroke. So that's how you can get multiple fills and multiple strokes onto text. Now, let me do a couple of quick adjustments here because this isn't really much of an effect here. I have a 1-point red stroke over top of a 1-point blue or teal colored stroke there. Do you remember the stacking order that we talked about from the last lesson as well? Check this out. I have my red stroke highlighted here. I'm going to increase the stroke weight to maybe 3. And then I'll take that stroke and drag it below my 1-point stroke, and now I have something like this happening. Now, it looks a little bit chewy, but just to give you the idea of stacking. In fact, you know what I could do? I could take my 3-point red stroke, put it beneath the fill, and that looks a little bit better. I could continue playing here. But here's the weird and wild thing. If I double-click back on characters, my actual text has no fill and no stroke. That's the weird thing. Everything's happening back up here. So that's how you can get around having multiple fills and multiple strokes on live text. And is it still live text? Well, I don't recall outlining it, so that should mean that I can come back in here, make a change, and it remains live, it remains dynamic. So there's a neat way around one of Illustrator's limitations.